tears and applause everywhere. In the middle of the crowd stood the Morrison family with their 2 children crying, embracing each other, not understanding what was happening. André Rieu walked toward them, holding something small in his hands. The entire street held its breath. When he stopped in front of David Morrison, he extended his hand and opened his fingers. A metallic glint reflected the sunlight, and seconds later, that family screamed with emotion. No one there could explain what they felt, but everyone knew they would never forget this moment. David Morrison lay awake on the concrete floor of the community shelter, staring at the ceiling that showed cracks and stains from moisture. Beside him, his wife Emma and their 2 children, Lily and Tyler, slept on thin mattresses provided by the county. It was their 3rd night here, and each night felt heavier than the last. 3 days ago, their entire world had literally been swept away. The Mississippi River had burst its banks after days of relentless rain, and their small house in the northern part of St. Louis was one of dozens that had been flooded. The water had come so fast, they'd barely had time to flee, wearing only the clothes on their backs. Everything was gone. Furniture that David had built himself as a carpenter, photo albums of Lily's and Tyler's childhood, Emma's collection of books she used for her lessons at the elementary school. Toys, clothes, memories, everything swallowed by the brown, muddy water that had raged through their street like a beast. "Dad," a small voice whispered in the dark. It was Lily, his 9-year-old daughter. "Can't we go home?" David felt his throat tighten. "Not yet, sweetheart. The house needs to dry out first." But that was a lie, and he knew it. The house wasn't just wet. It was destroyed. The foundation was damaged. The walls were cracked. And the county had said it would take months, maybe even a year, before it would be habitable again. And even then they had no money for repairs. David's work as an independent carpenter had slowly declined due to the economic downturn, and their savings were so small they would barely cover a month's rent. "I miss my bed," Tyler mumbled, the 10-year-old son lying next to his sister. "And my toys." "I know, son. Me too." Emma turned over, and David saw she'd been awake, staring at the same questions without answers. "David," she whispered, "the school called today. They asked why Lily and Tyler haven't been coming." "What did you say?" "What could I say? That we have no clean clothes? That they're sleeping on the floor and have no place to do homework?" David closed his eyes. He had failed as a man, as a father, as the protector of his family. He had failed. "We'll find a solution," he said, but even to his own ears it sounded hollow. "The county says the waiting list for social housing is 6 months. 6 months, David. Where are we supposed to go?" The next morning, Marcus Hayes appeared, their former neighbor, also affected but whose house was less severely damaged. He was a middle-aged man with a kind face and a smartphone he always carried. "David, Emma," he said when he found them in the common area, "I want to try something. Can I film you?" "Film us?" David looked suspiciously. "Why?" "There's a program on social media. People in need sometimes get help if their story is shared. I don't want your family to stay here when there might be someone who can help." Emma looked at her children sitting in the corner, drawing on scraps of paper someone had given them. They were drawing houses, big, colorful houses, with smoke from chimneys and flowers in the garden. Children dreaming of home. "Okay," she said finally. "Try it." Marcus pointed his camera and began filming as David told their story. The flood, the loss, the despair. But it was what happened at the end that made the video special. Without the adults planning it, Lily and Tyler spontaneously began to sing a song. A simple American folk song Emma had taught them about home and family. Their voices were thin and fragile, but there was something in the way they sang, hand in hand, that radiated pure hope despite everything they had lost. Marcus kept filming, tears in his own eyes. When the children finished, he stopped the recording and looked at it. "This," he said softly, "this needs to be seen by the world." He uploaded the video that afternoon with a simple title, "Morrison Family Lost Everything in the Flood but Not Their Hope." Within an hour, the video had 100 views. Within 3 hours, 1,000. And by evening, it was going viral. More than 50,000 people had watched, shared, and commented. "Look," Marcus said excitedly, showing his phone to David and Emma. "People want to help. There are already offers to donate clothing and toys." But David couldn't get enthusiastic. Clothing and toys were sweet, but they needed a roof over their heads. They needed stability. They needed a future. That evening, as David tried to sleep on the hard floor, he heard something strange, the sound of footsteps that stopped at the door of the shelter. Voices whispered, then silence. He stood up and walked to the window, looked out and saw a black car parked on the street. Someone sat in it, a silhouette he couldn't identify in the dark. The car stayed there for 10 minutes before driving away. David frowned. Who would come to a shelter in the middle of the night and then just drive away? He returned to his mattress, but couldn't find rest. There was something in the air, something he couldn't name but could feel, as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. In a luxury apartment on the other side of St. Louis, a man with silver hair sat at his desk, a laptop open before him. On the screen played a video of 2 children singing while their parents watched with faces full of pain and love. André Rieu had watched the video 3 times. Each time he felt his heart break a little more. He'd heard thousands of stories in his career, met thousands of people who needed help, but there was something about this family, in the way those children kept singing despite everything, in the dignity in the father's eyes, in the quiet strength of the mother, that touched him in a way he couldn't explain. This, he murmured to himself, this is what I must do. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. I have a project. I want you to start early tomorrow morning. Find the shelter where this family is staying and find me a realtor, someone discreet. A realtor? The assistant sounded confused. For what? For a house, a family house, something with a yard where children can play. Mr. Rieu, what are you planning? André smiled, but it was a smile full of determination. Something I've put off for too long, something more important than all the concerts I've ever given. The next morning, David was awakened by Marcus running excitedly toward him in the shelter. David, you won't believe who saw your video. David rubbed the sleep from his eyes. Who? André Rieu. The André Rieu. He shared it on his page with millions of followers. Look! He showed his phone where indeed André Rieu's official page had shared the video with a simple caption, "This family needs more than our tears. They need our action." Emma came closer, her eyes wide. But what does that mean? It means, Marcus said, that your story is now being seen by millions of people. Maybe real help is coming. But what none of them knew was that help was already on the way. At that exact moment, a black car was driving through the streets of St. Louis on its way to the shelter, with a man in the back seat who knew that what he was about to do would change 4 lives forever. The morning sun shone weakly through the fogged windows of the shelter when an unusual silence fell over the space. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned to the entrance. A black car had just stopped in front of the building, and a man stepped out whom almost everyone in America would recognize, André Rieu. He wasn't wearing a suit, like at his concerts, but a simple navy blue sweater and jeans. No entourage, no cameras, no publicity stunt. Just a man who had come with a purpose. David stood up from the table where he'd been trying to help his children with their breakfast, dry bread and jam provided by the county. He stared at the door, his brain refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. "Is that—" Emma began, but her voice died away. Lily was the first to react. She jumped from her chair and ran to the door, her little feet clicking on the linoleum floor. "Are you André Rieu?" she called out, her voice high with excitement. André smiled and knelt down to be at her eye level. "I am indeed, and you must be Lily. You know my name." Her eyes grew wide. "Of course I know your name. I heard you sing. You and your brother have beautiful voices." Tyler now came closer too, shyly hiding behind his sister but clearly fascinated. David and Emma walked slowly forward, still in shock. "Mr. Rieu," David stammered, extending his hand. "I don't know what to say." André shook his hand firmly. "Say nothing. I'm not here for gratitude or speeches. I'm here because I saw your video and I couldn't stay home." He looked around the shelter, the rows of mattresses on the floor, the meager possessions of dozens of families who had lost everything, the children playing with makeshift toys. His face became somber. "This," he said softly, "is no place for a family to live." "It's temporary," Emma said quickly. as if she had to defend herself. "We're looking for something better, but there's nothing," André completed for her. "I know, I've been informed." He looked at the children again. "Lily, Tyler, tell me about your old house. What was it like?" Lily's face lit up. "It was small but cozy. I had a pink room with stars on the ceiling that Dad had painted. And I had a room with shelves full of cars," Tyler added, his shyness momentarily forgotten. "Dad made them out of wood." André looked at David. "You're a carpenter." "Was," David corrected bitterly. "My tools, my workshop, everything is gone. And without tools, I can't take on jobs." "And you?" André turned to Emma. "I teach at Washington Elementary School, or taught. I've had to take leave to care for the children until we find a solution." André nodded slowly, absorbing all the information. Then he took out his phone and typed something. David and Emma looked at each other, not sure what to expect. "Good," André said finally, putting his phone away. "I have a proposal, but first I want you to understand something." He sat down on one of the plastic chairs and gestured for them to sit. Other residents of the shelter began to gather closer, curious about what was happening. "I'm rich," André said directly. "I've made more money than I could ever spend. I have houses, cars, all the comforts anyone could wish for. But you know what I don't have?" Lily shook her head. "The feeling I had today when I saw your video. The feeling that I can do something that really matters. Not playing music for thousands of people, that's easy for me. But making a difference in the life of one family, that's harder, but so much more valuable." David felt tears welling up. "Mr. Rieu, we don't want charity." "This isn't charity," André interrupted. "This is humanity. You need help, and I have the means to help. It's that simple." He looked at the children again. "But I want something from you. I want you to keep singing. I want you to keep believing in beauty, even when the world seems ugly. Can you do that for me?" "Yes," Lily and Tyler shouted in unison. André smiled. "Good. Then I have a task for your father." He handed David a business card. "It's a hardware store. Ask for Jack. He's expecting you. He'll help you pick out new tools, everything you need to start over." David stared at the card as if it were a bomb. "But that must cost thousands of dollars. I can't accept it." "You can and you will," André said firmly, "because if you don't have tools, you can't work. And if you can't work, you can't support your family. And that's unacceptable." He stood up, ready to leave. But then he turned once more. "Oh, and one more thing. I promise nothing, but I'll be back." Those words hung in the air long after André had left. Marcus Hayes, who had filmed everything from the sidelines with his phone still in hand, came forward. "I got everything," he said excitedly. "This needs to go online. People need to see this." "No," David said suddenly, raising his hand. "Not this. This moment was for us. Let's keep it private." Marcus hesitated but finally nodded. "You're right. Some things are too precious to share." Later that day, David went to the hardware store, clutching the business card tightly as if it might disappear. Jack, the owner, was a large man with a kind face who recognized him immediately. "You must be David," André called. "Come with me." He led David through the store, pointing to shelves full of tools. Saws, hammers, drills, everything a carpenter could dream of. "Choose what you need. Everything is already paid for." David felt overwhelmed. "Everything? Everything?" André said, "Give him what he needs to get his dignity back, so that's what we're doing." An hour later, David left the store with boxes full of new tools, his eyes red but his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. For the first time since the flood, he felt something that resembled hope, but what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning. At that exact moment, André Rieu was in conversation with a realtor, looking at photos of houses, making plans that would change the Morrison family's life in ways they couldn't imagine. That evening, back at the shelter, David and Emma sat on their mattresses while the children slept. "Do you think he'll come back?" Emma whispered. "I don't know. But he's already done more than anyone ever has for us. The tools are amazing, but Emma, we still have no house, no place to go." "I know. But for the first time in weeks, I feel like there might be a way forward. André gave us something more important than tools." "What's that?" "Hope. And sometimes that's all you need to keep going." But even as he spoke those words, David couldn't know that their story was about to take a turn so unexpected, so extraordinary, that it would exceed their wildest dreams. The next day passed in strange tension. David had unpacked his new tools and carefully organized them in a corner of the shelter. Other residents came to look, touching the shiny hammers and saws, their faces showing a mixture of admiration and jealousy. "You're lucky," an older man who had also lost everything said. "Not everyone gets such a chance." David nodded, feeling guilty about his fortune while so many others still sat empty-handed. "Maybe I can help you when I get work again." But despite the tools, despite André's visit, the fundamental question remained unanswered. Where would they live? The shelter was never meant as a permanent solution, and the county had already indicated that families would soon need to make other arrangements. Emma spent that day trying to keep Lily and Tyler busy. She had gotten some colored pencils and paper from a local charity, and the children drew obsessively, always the same thing. Houses, big ones, small ones, with chimneys and yards, with dogs and cats and suns that shone. "Mom," Lily asked as she colored, "when do we get a real house?" Emma felt her throat tighten. "Soon, sweetheart, Dad is working on it." But soon felt like a lie. They had no money for a down payment, no way to get a mortgage, no prospect of anything other than months, maybe years of uncertainty. That afternoon, Marcus Hayes received a strange phone call, a number he didn't recognize. A voice he did recognize. "Mr. Hayes, this is André Rieu." Marcus nearly fell from his chair. "Mr. Rieu, what? How?" "I got your number from the shelter. I have a question. Would you be free this evening?" "This evening?" "Yes, of course." "But why?" "I want you to film something important, but you must be discreet. Don't come before 8 p.m. to 47 Maple Street." 47 Maple Street. What's there?" "You'll see. And Marcus, say nothing to the Morrison family. Not yet." The line went dead before Marcus could ask more. He stared at his phone, his brain spinning. What was André planning? By evening, the shelter filled with the usual sounds of families preparing for another night on thin mattresses. Children cried, parents whispered, and everywhere hung the heavy scent of uncertainty. David sat on his mattress, polishing his new tools, though they were already clean. It was a way to keep his hands busy, his thoughts distracted from the questions that haunted him. "Dad," Tyler said, sitting beside him, "do you think Mr. Rieu will really come back?" "I don't know, son, but he gave his word, and I think he's a man who keeps his promises." "What do you think he's going to do?" David shook his head. "I have no idea, but whatever he does, we must be grateful. He's already given us more than we had any right to expect." At 7:30 that evening, when most residents of the shelter were preparing to sleep, a small delegation arrived at the door. David recognized one of them, a county official who had helped them after the flood. "Morrison family," the woman said. "Could you come with us?" Emma looked suspicious. "Why? Is something wrong?" "On the contrary, there's something you need to see." "The children?" "Bring them. This is about all of you." They followed the official outside, where a van was waiting. Lily and Tyler were excited by the unexpected adventure, but David felt his stomach turn with tension. "Where are we going?" he asked as they got in. "To Maple Street." The ride took only 10 minutes, but for David, it felt like an eternity. Through the windows, he saw the streets of St. Louis flash by, streets he had known his whole life but that now felt strange in the dark. Then the van stopped. They were in a quiet residential neighborhood, surrounded by well-maintained houses with lit windows and manicured yards. And there, in front of one of those houses, stood a crowd of people. "What?" David began, but his voice died away when he realized what he was seeing. Cameras, dozens of people with phones, neighbors who had come out of their houses. And in the middle of it all, standing in front of a house with a large red bow around the front door, stood André Rieu. The Morrison family stepped out of the van, completely overwhelmed. People began to applaud. Cameras flashed, and André walked toward them with a smile that lit up his entire face. "Welcome home," he said simply. Emma looked at the house, a beautiful 2-story building with a small front yard and large windows that radiated warm light outward. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean that this," André gestured to the house, "is your new home, if you want it." David felt his knees go weak. "That can't be. This is too much." It's exactly enough, André said. Come, let me show you around. He led them to the front door, and when he opened it, they collectively held their breath. The interior was fully furnished. A warm living room with soft couches, a dining table, a kitchen equipped with everything a family could need. Lily and Tyler ran inside, their footsteps echoing on the wooden floors as they ran from room to room. "Mom, Dad, come look," Lily called from upstairs. They climbed the stairs and found 2 bedrooms for the children, Lily's with pink walls and, indeed, stars painted on the ceiling, Tyler's with shelves ready for his future toys. "How did you know?" Emma began, but couldn't finish the sentence through her tears. "Your children told me," André said softly. "About the pink room, about the stars." I wanted them to feel at home. In the master bedroom, David found something that made him collapse completely. On the bed lay a set of new tool belts, and on a note it said, "For the carpenter who can build new dreams." He sank onto the bed, his shoulders shaking from crying. Emma sat beside him, her own tears flowing freely. "Why?" David asked when he had his voice back. "Why are you doing this for us?" André came into the room and crouched down in front of the couple. "Because I heard your children sing when they had nothing. Because I saw the dignity in your eyes, even when everything seemed lost. Because sometimes, when you have the power to do something good, you simply must." He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the street where the crowd was still gathered. "And because there are too many people who need help, and too few people who help. I can't save everyone, but I can help you. And maybe when you're back on your feet, you can help someone else." Downstairs, the children called out that they had found another room, a small study where they could do their homework. "This is—" "I have no words," Emma said. "You don't need words," André said. "Just live. Just be happy. Just give your children a home where they can grow. That's thanks enough." Outside, Marcus Hayes began filming, his hands trembling as he tried to capture this incredible moment. The neighbors watched, some crying, others smiling, all touched by what they saw. This was more than an act of charity. This was a reminder that humanity still existed, that goodness was still possible, that one person could truly make a difference. We return to the moment where it all began. The crowd on the street, the cameras, the tension in the air. André Rieu stands before the Morrison family, his hand extended, something glistening in it. David stares at it, unable to believe what he's seeing. Their keys. Not just any keys, but the keys to the house behind them. The house that is now theirs. "Is this real?" he asks, his voice barely audible. "This is real," André confirms. Lily is the first to move. She grabs the keys from André's hand and runs to the front door, turning them in the lock like she's done 1,000 times in her dreams. The door swings open and she storms inside, followed by Tyler. "It's real, Dad, Mom, it's real." Their voices echo through the house. Emma collapses in André's arms, her body shaking from crying. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she keeps repeating. André embraces her, his own eyes moist. "No thanks. Just live. Just be happy." David can't move. He stands there staring at the house, their house, unable to grasp the reality. 2 weeks ago they had lost everything. And now, through the goodness of a stranger who gave more than they had ever dared hope, they had gotten back more than they had lost. The crowd bursts into applause. Neighbors come forward to welcome them to the neighborhood. Children offer to play with Lily and Tyler. An elderly woman brings a freshly baked pie. "Welcome to Maple Street," she says warmly. "We're glad you're here." Marcus Hayes films everything, tears streaming down his own face as he captures this moment. Later that evening, he'll upload the video with the title, "This is what happens when humanity wins." Within hours it will go viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments from people around the world being reminded of what is good in humanity. But at this moment on this street among these people, it's not about views or fame, it's about a family who got a second chance, about a man who used his means to make a difference, about a community coming together to welcome newcomers. André gathers the family before he leaves. "I forgot to give you one thing," he says. He walks to his car and returns with a large oblong case. When he opens it, Lily and Tyler see what's inside, and their eyes grow wide. It's a violin, not an expensive Stradivarius like André uses, but a good solid beginner's violin, perfect for children. "There's also a note," André says. handing it to Emma. She reads it aloud for Lily and Tyler. Play for life. Let music remind you that even in the darkest times there is always beauty, always hope. Lily touches the violin carefully, as if it's fragile. Is it really for us? It's for you, and when you're ready, I want to hear you play. Deal? Deal! Both children shout at once. André looks one last time at the family, their faces full of tears and joy, their bodies finally relaxing after weeks of tension. This, he thinks, is why I do what I do. Not for the fame, not for the money, but for moments like these. One more thing, he says to David. There's a workshop in the garage, nothing fancy, but enough to get started, and I've already spoken with some local contractors. They're looking for a good carpenter. David shakes his head in disbelief. You've thought of everything. I tried, but the rest is up to you. Rebuild your life, make it better than before, and when you can, help someone else who needs help. With those words, André leaves, walking back to his car, the crowd applauding as he drives away. But before he goes, he turns one more time and looks at the house where the Morrison family has gone inside, their silhouettes visible through the lit windows. He smiles. This was good. This was right. And tomorrow he would wake up knowing that 4 lives had been changed forever by his action. 3 weeks later, the house at 47 Maple Street was slowly becoming a real home. The first days had been a blur of emotion and unreality. David and Emma walked through the rooms as if in a dream, afraid they would wake up and it would all disappear. But it didn't disappear. Every morning they woke up in their own bed, in their own room, with their own children running through their own house. It was real, it was lasting. And slowly, they began to believe that this was their new reality. David had set up his workshop in the garage, his new tools carefully organized on the workbenches that were already installed. The first job had come through one of the contractors André had spoken with, a living room renovation in downtown St. Louis. It wasn't big, but it was a start. He worked with a dedication that bordered on obsession, determined to prove that the trust placed in him wasn't misplaced. Every board he cut, every nail he drove, felt like an act of gratitude. Emma had returned to her job at school, and her colleagues had welcomed her with open arms and tears. The principal had even held a small collection to buy school supplies for Lily and Tyler, backpacks, notebooks, pens, everything they needed. Your story touched us all, the principal had said. It reminded us why we became teachers, to make a difference, to help, to be there when families need help. Lily and Tyler were enrolled at the local elementary school, just 3 blocks away. The first day they'd been nervous, ashamed of their story, afraid other children would treat them differently, but instead they were received as little celebrities. Children wanted to be their friend, wanted to hear about their adventure, wanted to meet the people who had been so brave despite everything they had lost. You're heroes, a classmate had told Lily. You lost everything but didn't give up. On a sunny Saturday morning, a month after their move to the new house, there was a knock on the door. David opened it and found a package on the stoop, no sender on it. Inside he found a letter and a ticket to a concert. The letter was handwritten in an elegant hand. Dear Morrison family, I hope you're settling well into your new home. I wanted to invite you to my next concert at Powell Symphony Hall. I would be honored if you would come and perhaps even sing with me. 2 children who taught me what real courage means. With warm regards, André. Lily and Tyler were beside themselves with excitement. They had practiced the violin André gave them every day, first clumsily, but with growing skill. Emma had even found a local music teacher willing to give them free lessons after hearing their story. Are we really going to his concert? Tyler asked, his eyes wide. We're really going, David confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. The evening of the concert was warm and clear. Powell Symphony Hall was filled with thousands of people who had come to see André Rieu and his orchestra. The Morrison family had seats in the front row, and when the lights dimmed and the orchestra began to play, they felt like they were part of something magical. Halfway through the concert, André stopped playing and addressed the audience. Tonight I have very special guests. Some of you may know their story. A family that lost everything but never gave up hope. Morrison family, would you please come forward? David, Emma, Lily, and Tyler walked to the stage, their hearts pounding. The crowd applauded, and when they stood on stage, they saw thousands of faces looking up at them with warmth and respect. These children, André said, placing his hands on Lily's and Tyler's shoulders, taught me that music doesn't just come from instruments. It comes from the human spirit that refuses to break, even when everything seems lost. He gave Lily and Tyler each a microphone. Will you sing that song you sang in the shelter? The song that started all this? The children looked at each other, then at their parents who nodded encouragingly, and then, hand in hand, they began to sing, that same simple American folk song about home and family. But this time it was different. This time they weren't singing from despair, but from joy. This time they weren't singing about what they had lost, but about what they had found. Their voices, so fragile in the shelter, were now powerful and full of life. The entire hall fell silent, listening to two children showing the world that hope is always stronger than sorrow. When they finished, there was a moment of deep silence before the applause erupted. Not just applause for a good performance, but applause for the strength of the human spirit. André knelt between the children. "You're special," he whispered. "Never forget that." Later that evening, back in their own house, the Morrison family sat in their living room, exhausted but happy. Lily and Tyler had fallen asleep upstairs, their heads still full of the excitement of the concert. David and Emma sat hand in hand on their couch in their own house. "Can you believe this is our life?" Emma asked softly. "Sometimes not," David admitted. "Sometimes I wake up in the morning and expect to be on that concrete floor, but then I hear the children laughing in their rooms, or I smell coffee from our kitchen, and I realize it's real. We're home." Emma leaned against him. "Do you think we can ever repay what André did for us? Not in money, but maybe in deeds. He said we should help when we can. Maybe that's how we repay, by passing on his kindness." 2 months later, David began doing exactly that. His carpentry business was growing steadily, and when he heard about families in need, people hit by disasters or just bad luck, he offered his services for free. "For the first piece of furniture," he would say. "The rest we can discuss later." Emma began volunteering at the local food bank, spending her free Saturdays helping others who needed help. And Lily and Tyler, inspired by their parents, began giving small concerts at nursing homes, using their growing musical skills to bring joy to the elderly. Marcus Hayes continued to follow their story, no longer for views or fame, but because it inspired him. He had started a small foundation to help connect people in need with those who could help, inspired by what he had seen happen with the Morrison family. On the first anniversary of their move to the house, the family organized a small party. They invited the neighbors who had welcomed them so warmly, the music teacher who gave the children free lessons, the contractors who had given David work, and of course, Marcus. And to everyone's surprise, André Rieu also stopped by. No cameras, no publicity. Just a man who wanted to see how the family he'd helped was doing. "The house looks beautiful," he said as he looked around. David had made some furniture himself. A dining table, a bookcase, small things that made the house more personal. "It feels like home," Emma said. "Real home." André smiled. "That's all I wanted. Not just to give a house, but to help create a home." During the party, Lily and Tyler played their violins. Not perfect, still learning, but with such passion and joy that it didn't matter. The guests applauded, and then André took his own violin and joined them, forming an improvised trio that made music that radiated not just beauty, but also hope. Later, when most guests had left, David sat on his porch, watching his children play in the yard. Their yard, full of flowers Emma had planted, and a swing David had built. André came and sat beside him. "Do you have regrets?" "About what?" "About everything you lost in the flood." David thought, long before answering. "You know, I thought I would. Those first weeks were the darkest of my life." But now he looked at his family, at his house, at the community he had found. "Now I realize that what I've gained is greater than what I lost." "What do you mean?" "I learned what's really important. Not the stuff we had, but the people we love. I learned that there's still goodness in the world, and I learned that a house isn't made by walls, but by the love that lives within it." André nodded. "And that, my friend, is the greatest lesson of all." As the sun set over St. Louis, it cast a warm golden light over the house at 47 Maple Street. Inside, laughter rang out, music played, and the sounds of a family who had learned that sometimes From the greatest loss can come the greatest blessings. And somewhere in that music, in that joy, in that love, was a reminder that sometimes when everything seems lost, it takes just one person to remind you of what's possible. One act of kindness to change a life. One gesture to show that humanity still exists, is still powerful, still has the ability to create miracles. Because it's not the grand gestures that change the world, but the small acts of love and kindness we do for each other every day. And sometimes those acts come from unexpected places, from unexpected people, and create stories that are told for generations. The Morrison family's story was such a story. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is always light, always hope, always a chance to begin again.